Hey there, welcome to DrummRoll. Today I've got with me an Australian saxophone player with a wealth of experience. She's a lecturer in music at the University of New South Wales and performed around Australia, India and in Europe. Her specialty is mixing Indian and Western ideas, and the concert Bridge of Dreams, for which she was the musical director at the Sydney Festival last year, sold out the City Recital Hall in central Sydney. Here to talk about a digital concert that's coming up this week, based around the meditations of Gandhi, is Sandy Evans.
Oh, it's great to be here, Annabelle.
Tell me a little bit about your fascination with India. How on earth did that come about?
Well, when I was a teenager, I lived in Singapore for my last 2 years of high school, and I used to love going to the South Indian temples in Singapore. I didn't understand the music or the language or anything, but I was just sort of drawn to it somehow. And then I spent another sort of seminal period in India as a young person, thinking I might want to be a film director. I spent
Ooh.
about 6 months there then, but I realised I was sort of more drawn to music and came back to Australia, became a jazz musician, but always had this love in my mind for Indian music. And then I met Guru Karakudi Mani through the Australian Art Orchestra, a fabulous mridangam player from Chennai. And he became a guru to me, really, both in music and in life. And it
In
was
a
his.
spiritual sense, you mean?
Well, I mean, I didn't become a Hindu or anything like that, but he's just such an extraordinary human being and a friend, So it's not a guru in the traditional sense, but certainly a guide in terms of music and life. And meeting him and studying with him gave me just a little bit of a foundation in Indian music. Around the same time, I also met the tabla player Bobby Singh. Bobby is from a different tradition. He plays tabla and therefore is from the North Indian classical music tradition. Guru Karakudi Mani plays Carnatic music and is from the South Indian tradition. Another key person in my whole experience, and you can see both of these people behind me in my backdrop here. There's Bobby playing the tabla, and then next to him playing the sitar is Sarangan Sriranganathan. Sarangan lives in Sydney. He's from a Sri Lankan background, and Sarangan has been also an extraordinary teacher and friend to me. And it's really through these relationships with these amazing musicians that I've come to love Indian music and to find out a little bit about it. It's a fascination with rhythm. It's a fascination with the way that melody can create and express emotion. And also, I'm very interested in overlaps between improvisation in jazz and in Indian music. So these facets have just got me hooked, and I think I'm going to be exploring it for the rest of my life.
So that fusion between jazz and Indian, the knowledge that you already have from jazz, how did you meld the two together? Like, were the Indian musicians, were they familiar with working with jazz musicians?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. But only up to a certain point, the same way that jazz musicians are also familiar with Indian music. I mean, that probably dates back, well, it dates back quite a long way, at least to the 1950s in Mumbai, where there was a lot of overlap in the film industry. It's fascinating, and there were these visits to India by Dave Brubeck. It's quite likely that Take Five, one of the most famous jazz compositions of all time, that the rhythm for that came from a Goan musician that they jammed with in Mumbai. So
Mm.
these connections go back at
But he
least
got
that
his
far.
royalties.
I doubt that he did. These connections go back a long way. And then, of course, there were the group Shakti with the guitarist John McLaughlin. There's also been a lot of Australian pioneers in this area. The one who's really inspired me is a bass trombonist and percussionist, multi-instrumentalist from Melbourne called Adrian Sheriff. Yeah, so it's kind of like a whole genre that has been developing for a while, but that's not to say, that we know a great deal about each other's traditions. We're always learning, and what I love about the process is that the Indian musicians are very open to sharing their ideas, and they're also very interested to find out, how jazz musicians think. The other key musician for me probably was John Coltrane, because in the 1960s, Coltrane got very interested in Indian music and was friends with Ravi Shankar, was interested in studying with Ravi Shankar actually, but he passed away before that was able to happen. But I think even though Coltrane didn't play Indian music, the influence of Indian music in Coltrane's modal music is very apparent, and he had a piece that he actually called India. So the introduction of modal music and long extended solos, and the type of interaction between the melody instrument and the drums, a lot of these things, although they're done very differently in jazz, some of the concepts, have a parallel with aspects of Indian music.
Okay. Now, I'm going to take us on to a different topic here. The world as it stands at the moment seems to be just such a big push and pull with politics and all sorts of things, where people are starting to stand up against those that put themselves in the authority position. And there seems to be places in here where there is violence, which we're sort of seeing on the television and that kind of thing. Is that what it was that drew you to the subject of this concert that we're going to be seeing coming up this week?
Definitely, those things were very, very significant. Last year was the 150th anniversary of the birth of Gandhi, and so a lot of activities happened, and this was connected in a way, to celebrating his birth, but not in a formal way, more sort of as an acknowledgement of what a extraordinary thinker he was, to be able to express ideas of non-violence and go further than expressing them, to actually change the course of history in his country through enacting non-violent protest. So
Which is
I
very
think
powerful. So I think there's some people in America could certainly learn from that at the moment.
they certainly are. It's yeah, I mean, it's turned out to be very interesting timing with the American election, that we're actually, going to be presenting this concert, around that time, and it makes you sort of think, well, gosh, the world really needs everybody to think about how we're going to deal with conflict. How are we
Yes,
going to
yes.
progress? How are we going to develop as a constructive world society? It's
United
incredibly
together,
important.
really, isn't it? Or we're
Exactly.
just listening to each other. Because when you
Exactly.
see these things in America where they're actually planning violence for after the election, I mean, that's crazy to me, and that's premeditated. So yes, if we can spread this concert out far beyond the locals, that would be very helpful, I think, at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Gandhi's words are just so powerful and so relevant, more relevant now than ever.
Have you got some there that you want to share?
I do. So what we did in this project was Gandhi wrote in English, but we actually translated some of his texts with the help of Chris Whiteman and Vasudevacharya into Sanskrit. But I'll read, this is called Gandhi's Prayer for Peace. I offer you peace. I offer you love. I offer you friendship. I see your beauty. I hear your need. I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute that source in you. Let us work together for unity and peace. That's exactly what you said, Annabelle. Let us work together for unity and peace.
It's
And
beautiful.
that sums it up.
Mm.
We have to. We really have to do that.
So how have you mixed these words with music to make the concert?
Good question. And it's not easy to answer, I suppose. So the musicians are some of my absolute all-time favorite collaborators. They're people that I have worked with in other contexts before. So we've got Bobby Singh on tabla, Sarangan Sriranganathan on sitar and vocals. We've got Brett Hurst on the bass, and Alon Ilsar playing drums, and also this extraordinary instrument that he's been part of inventing, the air sticks.
Ooh,
So in musical terms, and of course I'm playing saxophone, in musical terms we've tried to bring together these elements. So there's a very contemporary element with Alon performing sampled sounds with the air sticks. He looks like a dancer when he does it because he's playing sounds in the air and using the sticks to just trigger a sound. It's the most beautiful thing to watch and to listen to. And then along with that, we have some, I guess you might call them traditional elements from jazz and from Indian classical music traditions. As far as the words go, Sarangan is singing some of the words, and as I said,
in English.
In Sanskrit,
Right.
yeah. 3 of the pieces are vocal pieces in terms of, having lyrics that he sings and they take more like a song form. One of the pieces, Sarangan sings, but he doesn't sing lyrics. He sings like a sort of Indian version of solfege that they call sargam, which is, something that you'll be familiar with. You hear it a lot in Indian music. The singers are just extraordinary at doing this. Then there are other songs with no lyrics, and Sarangan's playing sitar. And in those instances, the interpretation of Gandhi's writings is less literal and more, the way you might hear it, say, if somebody wrote a symphony in response to, to some of Gandhi's lyrics or something like that.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is going to be broadcast as part of the Sydney International Women's Jazz Festival. The concert will be coming up on the 3rd of November 2020 at 8 p.m. Sydney time zone. That is Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, which is the Greenwich Mean Time of +11. And you'll be able to watch the concert. I'll give you the link below in the description and also on the calendar of drumroll.tv. And you'll be able to see that concert. It sounds really amazing. I'm wondering are you able to put perhaps the lyrics on your website, and I can share the link to that as well, so that as the concert's coming out, then people will be able to read it while they're listening to the music. Might be an idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, that's lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sandy. I'm really looking forward to the concert. Sounds great.
Thanks so much, Annabelle. Appreciate that.